Hello, good morning, Sitaram, and welcome to another program in the series, Addiction and Recovery. As usual, on a Thursday morning, I'm your host, Ram Naresh Dwarika, and I just want to let all our listeners know this is a very interesting program this morning. It is a program that has been requested by many people over a period of time, and it's a very important topic. The program is going to be recorded and it will also be repeated on radio and TV Jagriti at 9 p.m. tonight, and it will be posted on Facebook and YouTube. So those of you who can't stay for the entire program, you can come back and you can go into my YouTube channel, Addiction and Recovery with Ram Naresh Dwarika, or Facebook, and you can also look at the program there. This program has also been used as a resource where you can send a link to someone who you believe might benefit from this program. So that this morning, our topic is a topic that affects children, teenagers, adults, families, workplaces, schools, and even entire communities. That is why I'm saying it is very important. So we will be discussing social media addiction in Trinidad and Tobago, its consequences, and before the end of the program, some possible solutions as well. Now, social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, WhatsApp, and Snapchat have all revolutionized communication and access to information. And so, like I mentioned before, it is a very useful tool where you can send a link to someone, material that they can benefit from, or you can always come back to it at any point in time if you didn't have time to listen to the program this morning. Now, these various social media sites and applications, they allow us to stay connected with family and friends and conduct business, learn new skills, and keep informed about current events. However, for many individuals, what begins as a useful tool can gradually become a compulsive habit. And that is what I'm talking about today. I don't only want to look at the bad side of it, I want to look at the good side of it as well. So today we will explore what social media addiction is, why it occurs, how it affects the brain, its impact on children, adolescents, and adults, and the situation in Trinidad and Tobago in particular. I also want to look at some of the warning signs of addiction, consequences for families and society, and also want to look at some practical solutions for individuals, parents, schools, employers, and the government in general as to how we can deal with this going forward. So hopefully by the end of this program, you will have a clearer understanding of how to use the technology without allowing technology to control your life. Now, social media addiction is a behavioral addiction. Unlike the physical chemical addiction that you take drugs and all of that, this one, we can be addicted to behaviors like gambling, for instance. So to social media, and it is characterized by excessive concern about social media, an uncontrollable urge to use it, and spending so much time on it that it interferes with other important areas of our life. And that is what distinguishes something that is recreational from what is addictive and compulsive. Once it starts to create problems, in a person's life, whether it be a drug, a behavior, once it's starting to cause problems, and you are aware that it is causing problems, and you still can't stop yourself from doing it, that is the definition of addiction. Although not officially classified as a separate psychiatric disorder, that is social media addiction, It's not in the DSM-3 and DSM-4 and 5 and so on. Many experts compare it to gambling addiction because both involve reward pathways in the brain. Now, some common signs of social media addiction would be that checking the social media immediately upon waking. As soon as you get up, a lot of people sleep, including me. My phone is not too far from where I sleep, within reaching distance, because sometimes people might call me, after hours and so on with some emergency. And I don't encourage it, but it happens. So first thing in the morning, a lot of people now are, and so as you listen to this program, I want you to check yourself and see if this is happening with you as well. Checking social media immediately upon waking in the morning. Then feeling anxious when unable to access a phone. And I had this conversation with my son this morning. Can you imagine? We were talking about this topic. Can you imagine leaving home and forgetting your phone? Or not having your phone for a day? Think about that for a minute. Let that sink in a little bit. How life would be like. And then you suddenly realize how dependent we have become on this little instrument. Then constant scrolling without purpose, you know, especially with things. And I have found myself guilty of that for some time as well. TikTok and all of that, just scrolling, to get to something more interesting, And I'll talk about that in detail as we go along the program this morning. And then losing track of time online. And I am also guilty of that. You tell yourself, I'm just going to check this, I'm just going to look at that. I want to follow what's happening in Iran and what, and then you catch yourself being distracted with other things that, between each video, and the time just flies. So that there's a lot of difficulty reducing usage despite repeated attempts. And if you go to your phone, I go to my phone battery to check its status and see how it has been used. And you'll see most of the time it's not on other important things. It was spent, most of the battery was used up on social media. So you all can do that when you get a minute. Many people report spending just 5 minutes online only to discover that 1 or 2 hours have passed. The addiction often develops gradually and silently. I want to repeat that. This addiction, social media addiction, it develops gradually and silently. So why is social media so addictive? The answer lies largely in the brain. Every notification, every like you get, every comment or message triggers the release of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. And it is the same thing that happens when we take a drink of alcohol or take a smoke of marijuana or cocaine. The brain releases a little bit of dopamine. Now, even if we went to the temple and sang and kirtan and all of those, and we feel happy, it's because the brain releases a little dopamine. It doesn't discriminate. Once you feel dopamine gets released, you feel happy. So that using drugs and using behaviors that are addictive have over time started, we learned that it will cause us to feel happy. Now the brain begins to associate social media use with positive feelings. And you would have heard the word algorithms. The developers of these social media sites, they have artificial intelligence now that have studied patterns of behavior. And from the videos that you have been looking at and spending more time on, that is noted by the artificial intelligence. And as a result, they give you more and more of that material. So if you were looking at Iran issues, you'll get more of that. If you were looking, whatever you're looking for, whatever you're spending more time on. the social media platforms are going to be feeding you more and more of that. So what develops is infinite scrolling with no end in purpose. There is no natural stopping point because curiosity is so powerful. You want to see, I wonder what's in the next video. What is in the next video? And so you keep scrolling going. And then there's the other side for people who have invested in YouTube and TikTok. You know, they pay producers and developers of these programs, and that is depend on how many views you get, how many likes you get, how many subscriptions you get, and so that people who have put programs out there, they keep going back to see how many, they get alerts, which constantly draw them to go and check the phone, to check into the site. And of course, there's likes and reactions that people look for. How many people like what I said, how many people reacted to it. And this is not only in TikTok and YouTube, it is also in Facebook and all of those places. So now everything, I mean, the people who marketing this stuff, who putting it out there, they are also doing research as to how to make it more and more attractive and enticing. So what you have is a lot of short videos being developed. Not like my program this morning that's going to run for an hour. And from the time people see 5 minutes after, look, I can't be bothered with the rest of it. You know, they produce short videos. And so quick content provides rapid stimulation in the brain. You know, there's a natural tendency in all of us. We want to feel good and we want to feel good right now. We have difficulty postponing gratification. And that is one of the basic underpinnings of any addiction, the inability to postpone gratification and that desire to feel good right now. Then there's what you call FOMO, that is the fear of missing out. You know, when you stay away from it, I wonder what they're saying, what is going on. You know, sometimes there's some scandals, there's a controversy. Sometimes there's a little battle going on between two presenters on these platforms, and you're watching, you come like the referee now. You know, you want to see, all right, this one said this, what this one will, how will this one respond? And it happens not only in arguments, but in debates as well on the media. So the result is a cycle now that you find yourself in this whirlpool of checking and you know, and every time the phone goes ping, you run to the phone. So the result is a cycle where you're checking the phone and you're of course receiving rewards, you're feeling pleasure, and then you repeat the behavior. That's the cycle. You know, you check your phone, you feel good what you see, and then you repeat the behavior again. Now, over time, this cycle can become habitual and difficult to break. And that is similar to the compulsion to use other substances. Because when you're not using it, you go into a kind of withdrawal, and I'll talk about that. Now, the situation in Trinidad and Tobago, let's look at, you know, what is happening here. Trinidad and Tobago has one of the highest rates of internet and smartphone access in the Caribbean. And this is per capita for the population. We have the highest amount of usage. Social media has become deeply integrated in everyday life. And, you know, as I say, I'm saying this, I'm presenting this program, I'm also looking at myself. Yes, many citizens spend several hours daily on social networking platforms. And thank God I have my garden at the back. I leave the phone, I don't carry it with me. You know, and I only have Wi-Fi when I'm in the house. So those of you trying to reach me, and if I'm not near Wi-Fi connectivity, you will not be able to reach me on the WhatsApp. Now, when you look at among secondary school students, social media use often exceeds recommended screen time limits. And I am looking at this, empirically. I'm looking at young children. There's I have seen little kids throwing a tantrum because their mother will not give them the phone because they want to go and play games on it. They want to access social media on it later on. I have even seen I see parent putting the phone with a little baby who's lying on the side and looking at the screen as though to pacify the child, and the child responds by seeing these pictures going, these cartoons and so on, that they have developed. There's some nice ones on YouTube that keep the children attention all the time, but these screens and these rays that is emitting from it, the white light and all of that, can be very damaging to children's eyes, especially in that developmental stage. Now, teachers frequently report in Trinidad that they report reduced attention span because these short videos has kind of created a situation where we can't really wait to see the end of it. And let us think for a minute. I mean, if you're looking at TikTok or one of Facebook or one of these social media platforms, they present the material with such great attraction and interest that in no way the maths teacher and the English teacher could compete with that in the class because these subjects could be sometimes very tedious and boring. So that children already with, you have a growing cadre of children with attention hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And now when you have social media spurring that on, one can imagine what is going to happen in the schools. So that there's increased classroom distractions. And I know some children are carrying their phones to school and they're not supposed to be using it during class time, but they're there because the parents have made a case. They need to know where the child is and to be able to pick them up and all of those things so that they need to be able to connect with their children, especially with the crime situation and so on. But that's another topic. So that sometimes this causes, of course, sleep deprivation in children. I know children who are now staying way up late into the night and next day they can't get up in the morning. Or even if you manage to get them up, when they go to the classroom, they can't pay attention because they're sleepy, they're tired, they were up all night. And then you have that serious issue of cyberbullying incidents that are facilitated by the social media, by the internet. The final result is you're seeing academic underperformance. Now, as I say this, we have come out of COVID and we really, almost all our children had to be schooled online, which was a good thing. Thank God we had the various platforms that could have been used and still being used to do classes, extra classes, and online classes that children are doing. And as I said, there's a lot of good benefit, but we have the same thing that could be good. Just like food. Food is good, but if you keep overeating it, you're going to become obese and you're going to put on weight, and then you're going to start suffering with health conditions. So that eventually you as parents will see a drop in the child's performance in school. Parents increasingly express concerns about excessive screen use among children and adolescents. And it's a sad sight, where I've seen families sitting at the table now. Father is out to work, mother is out to work, children are out at school, and the very little time they get to sit together is at the dinner table. Because after that, the children will go off to their rooms to do their assignment and whatever online. Parents will do whatever they have to do. But even at the table, they all on the phone. And somebody told me a joke where, you text the other person to pass the ketchup on the phone rather than raise your head and say, hey, pass the ketchup to me. So that This is really, really ruining the relationship, the connectivity, the cohesion that are supposed to be there in family. People are starting to become strangers in their own house, and from each other. Even couples, you know, it happens. Some people start following a show and they just want to continue to see it. They want a series there so that this little spare time we have from all other things, in the phone. So it doesn't allow for people to interact with each other. And when she's not on the phone, he's on the phone. When he's not on the phone, she's on the phone. And then there are people who are calling all the time and expect you to take their call as well, and that takes up a lot of time. So we are losing out on a lot of that interpersonal communication and relationship. And that is telling on families. I do family therapy, I do marital counseling, and I can tell you a lot of problems are being caused. They started with the phone use, that secret texting to someone, an admirer, and going through that excitement, stealing a chance, as it were, and then you could land into trouble. So workplaces are also reporting productivity challenges associated with frequent smartphone use during working hours. And I have workers and they have it hooked on there like this and doing their work, how much can you concentrate and pay attention if you are divided, your attention is divided between what you're doing and what you're listening to. And some people can go on and on with the phone hooked up on the shoulder like that. In fact, I've seen phones with a hook made now for that purpose. And of course, now those who could afford it, you have the earbuds where you don't have to hook the phone again. You have it plugged into your ears. And if the place is catching a fire, nobody can get your attention because your ear is stuffed up on both sides with this thing and you can't hear a thing. So while social media offers tremendous benefits, many professionals in education, healthcare, counseling, and addiction services have observed growing signs of problematic use. Now, I want to talk about the impact on children and teenagers, especially because they are the people of tomorrow. They are our population. That's the future of the society. Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable because their brains are still developing. Excessive social media use can contribute to reduced academic performance, and of course, that will have consequences for their future. So that homework is delayed, concentration declines, study time is replaced by screen time, and then there's insomnia, sleep problems. Many young people remain online late into the night. Now, all of us human beings, we have what is called a biological clock, and which really triggers us to feel sleepy at a certain time and to wake us up after we've gotten sufficient sleep in the morning. Now, if you're supposed to be getting 8 hours sleep and you have to be up at 6, now a lot of children have to be up even before 6, but let's suppose you have to get up at 6. You must be asleep by 10 to get your 8 hours sleep. But if you are waking until 12, 1 o'clock, and you have to get up at 6, you will end up sleeping in the classes and you will develop sleep problems because it's like your biological clock goes haywire after a while. So that insufficient sleep affects learning, it affects memory, and it also affects emotional regulation. I can tell you, when if I didn't sleep well last night, I have a short fuse today. I've realized that with myself. I get angry very easily. I become very irritable. Sleep is critical, just as important as food. Exercise is so is sleep. In fact, they have coined a phrase, sleep is golden. You know, I see people every so often in my practice here who are having sleep problems, and I've had to use acupuncture to help them, to bring them back and teach them how, there's a sleep routine that can be taught. Now, eventually all of this it leads to reduced social skills because a lot of people are not having face-to-face communication again, and so they lack the skills to, hello, how are you today, and things like that. Conversations are negotiated, and it takes a certain amount of skill to be able to relate to another person without becoming abusive or offensive, so that we are losing that. People are now becoming very abrupt. They don't have time to talk. So some young people become more comfortable communicating through screens than in person. They rather to text someone, or record a message and send it. Now, the exposure to harmful content is always a concern with children on the various devices. Because if you look at the games that are being developed, that these children are playing on their phones and Xbox and all of that, first thing you'll notice, there's the majority of them, they demonstrate violence. Children are learning, well, you eliminate the opposition. There's no room for dialogue with the other person. You have to kill as many of them to reach the goal and win the game. So there's a lot of violence. Then there's, of course, pornography. Children these days, our children, my grandchildren are better, more adept at using the phone than I am. When I can't figure out something, I go to them. They're very bright, and so they know where to find all the information. Everything you're trying to hide from them, it becomes a game where they test you to see if you can really catch them. It becomes like adventure for them to be able to shift the boundaries that you might have set. And so the children are not only curious about geography and history and mathematics, they're curious about sex and sexuality and all of that. And so they're going on the sites, and you who at work, and you are unable to follow all of that. Then there's drug related content on these sites. The drug companies and so on, the rum companies and so on, are also using the various media sites to market the products and so on. And gambling is promoted as well. I'm seeing it, even reputable company like Amazon and all of that are now getting into this lotto business, gambling business, because there's money in it. And then there are dangerous online challenges where people see things and they try to emulate it themselves, and they can get into serious trouble. Now, as I say that, I remember these online dating sites where you really don't know the person that you're talking to. They put a picture there, but that's not them. They post a picture that is artificially generated as well and makes them look really handsome and beautiful, and then you keep talking, and then you decide to meet at a certain point, and it sounds like a movie, real adventure. And we know, we have seen it in the news here, how many people have been literally murdered because they were lured to go to a place, and the person, whoever this predator, picked them up and took them, abused them, and then murdered them. And then there's the whole question of cyberbullying I mentioned before. Unlike traditional bullying in school, and that is still happening too, there's bullying which can occur 24 hours a day, where people, I heard one teenager telling another one, "I'll light you up on Facebook," meaning he'll send all kind of derogatory things about, and we've seen it happening. I've seen it myself. And now obscene language has become like nothing. There's no rules on things, social media like TikTok and all. People are just cussing like it's out of style. Now, as a result of this, people who become victims of cyberbullying and so on, they now suffer with anxiety. Some of them become depressed. Some of them withdraw socially completely. They are afraid to interact with people now online. And then you have all those situations where your information could be hacked, identity could be stolen and all of that. All of these things. And then even in the Zoom meetings, I have seen people storming into it and, exhibitionists showing their nakedness, these voyeurs and so on. There's all that kind of crazy things that are possible. Now, while I say this, I'm not saying people should not use social media, but I'm saying all of this to make you, our audience, aware of what are some of the things that is happening out there that you need to be mindful about, so that cyberbullying and all of this can also cause young people, especially young people, to start developing a very low self-esteem. Because, when people, significant others, make statements about you, it has a very profound effect. So some cases have resulted in self-harm and even suicide internationally, where people, mutilate themselves, cutting themselves, and all of that. So that because self-harm is anger turned inward. When you can't hurt the other person and you feel so enraged, you take it out on yourself, you know. But we'll talk maybe on another program about some of those things. Then there are mental health consequences. One of the most serious concerns is the impact on mental health as a result of social media addiction. One is anxiety. Many users become dependent on notifications and online validation to feel good about themselves. Other people have to give you likes and subscribe, and that give you feedback. And on the other side, a lot of people can become depressed when very, very uncouth things are said about you. People often compare their real lives to carefully edited online images. And I'm not as good as, I'm not handsome as they tell themselves, and can become depressed. Now, all of this creates unrealistic expectations in a person's. For some, it creates loneliness. Ironically, individuals may have hundreds of online friends while feeling socially isolated because you're not leaving your room. Yes, your friends are all over the world on social media with you. But when you step out the door, you're alone. It is like you're living in two worlds now. All of this can lead to, of course, low self-esteem. The constant comparison can damage your self-worth because you're listening to your friends and they're doing this and they're doing that and they have passed this and they've got this award and and sometimes it's not true at all. Some people just, as we say, bigging up themselves, and you feeling like you're just marking time in one place. Your life is not going anywhere, and this can have a very disastrous effect on the young mind. Now, of course, there's also arguments, negative comments, and online conflicts that increase emotional strain. Now, research worldwide consistently shows associations between excessive social media use and poorer psychological well-being. There's a relationship between excessive social, because you're not going out there to play cricket or football. You're not in this sunshine anymore to get your vitamin D3 from the ultraviolet rays. And you're not interacting. You're starting to develop like an animal in a little hole, you know? So that physical health consequences, of course, social media addiction affects not only mental health, but physical health as well. You can suffer with eye strain. Extended screen exposure can cause blurred vision, headaches, eye discomfort, and then you can also have neck and back problems. All the time you like this, Poor posture contributes to neck pain, shoulder pain, back problems. And then, as I mentioned before, there's sleep disturbances. Blue light exposure interferes with normal sleep cycles, so that eventually you have reduced physical activity as well. because hours spent online often replace exercises where you would have gone out and played a game of cricket or football or tennis. Now you're sitting on your with your phone, you know, and even people attending, they have their phone with them, and with the match going not to their liking, they are on their phone. Now these things have additional effects on the individual, like lack of exercise, lack of physical activity is also going, and stress, anxiety will cause what is called comfort eating. And you know what is going to happen? You're going to put on weight. Sedentary behavior increases obesity risk, especially in young people. And then with that lifestyle, it will be very difficult to get it off because the things you have to do to get off the extra weight is going to cut into your screen time. So these physical consequences may seem minor initially, but they become significant over time. Now, I want to speak about the impact on families and relationships because this is a very important, observation that I'm making, that social media addiction can undermine family life. As I mentioned before, sitting at the table, but everybody on their phone. Now, some of the common complaints include family members sitting together but not interacting. Parents distracted by phones. You're right in the middle of a conversation, an important issue in the family, but the phone rings, so you have to take the call. I've seen people eating and they wouldn't tell the other person, look, can you call me back or let me call you back when I'm done? You're talking on the phone. When you're talking on the phone, you can't focus on the food that you're eating. You understand? And that is not the right way for your body to assimilate. Well, it is really disrespectful to the food as well. Then, in such situations, parents on the phone all the time with this one, that one, WhatsApp. Yes, it's free, but children feel ignored. You don't have no time for me. And then they withdraw in a corner with their own phone. And the situation is compounded. Couples spending more time online than together. So only you're working, she's working, now you come home, you had dinner, you're in the bedroom and you're lying down there, but he's on his phone and she's on her phone, and you're not talking about what's happening with the kids, your plans for going future. The light bill is not paid, the window is falling down, the fridge need to fix. Relationships may suffer, of course, because of this, because communication declines. And communication is the lifeblood of any relationship, especially marriage relationship, even partnerships. You need to be able to communicate. Meaningful conversations become less frequent. Now, yes, one might argue, well, but we talk on the phone. But I could be telling you, well, look, I could be smiling and telling you accept my sympathies because you're not seeing my face. So that three-quarters of the message is lost because you're unable to see the affect of the other person. A person calls you and say, well, look, I'm sorry for what happened. But when you look at if you were physically talking to them, you'd know. They don't look like they're sorry. They're just saying that as a password to patch up things. So that, the old saying, actions speak louder than words. It still holds. We need to see the expression that you're really sorry or whatever for what has happened when you make that apology. So online interactions may also create misunderstandings and jealousy sometimes as well, because the emotional connection weakens over time and it's sometimes not even there. People become physically present, but emotionally absent. And there's a lot more that can be said about that. In relationships, there's a lot of people who are physically in the relationship, but they are emotionally absent. So that strong families require attention. They require communication. They also require shared experiences. And this is not always possible to communicate on a phone. No social media platform can replace genuine human connection. I want to repeat that. No social media platform can replace genuine human connection. So I want to speak a little bit about social media and other addictions as well. Social media addiction frequently overlaps with other addictions. Research suggests connections with gaming addiction, gambling addiction, pornography addiction, and substance use disorders. All of these are actually linked with social media addiction. Because if you know that gaming can be done online and gambling, people they seriously, compete with each other in games, and they become addicted to that. They can't drop out of the game now because that will cause them to lose face. They are ahead in the game, beating the rest of them. They are the top dog in that Xbox game, so they become addicted to it. They have to prove themselves. And when the game finishes, if it ever finishes, they go into withdrawal just like any other drug. And then there's gambling addiction online now, where it's very difficult to supervise, to detect. You can just stay on the phone, you think the person is texting a friend, but they just placed a bet and they're spending out all the money from the bank and you don't even know. And then, of course, pornography addiction, that's an addiction. And so that social media is like the platform for all of these. Even substance use disorders can be linked to social media because people are ordering the drugs online. I had a patient who would order the alcohol and have it delivered online. So for individuals in recovery from alcohol or drug addiction, excessive social media use can become a substitute addiction. And that is an important thing to consider. You see, I've heard this analogy. If you dig a hole in your backyard and you leave it and you don't put anything in it, over time nature will fill it back, with something else, with rubbish and garbage and all of that. So every time you remove an addiction, if you don't replace it, a bad habit with a good habit, some other bad habit is going to step in. So I've seen people give up alcohol and drugs, but take up gambling, take up other addictions. So that one has to be mindful. So social media can promote this. Instead of addressing underlying emotional issues, individuals may use social media as an escape. So that recovery requires balance and healthy coping skills, not jumping to the phone all the time. Now, I want to quickly, in the few minutes left, give some practical solutions for individuals. What can we do? I mean, it's easy to always point the problem, but it's not always easy to come up with the solutions. But what can we do? First thing is we need to monitor usage. Track your daily screen time. Go to your phone, go to your battery, and see which one of your apps use up most of your battery. And it will tell you, and you'll see maybe it's TikTok or Facebook or one of those. So you can check your screen time. Awareness is the first step. First, you have to know. Because sometimes, this can be going on all the time and you don't even realize it. Then you need to set limits. Establish specific periods for social media use. So that no phones around the dinner table. You might want to decide that in your family. Or you might decide, well, look, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever time you decide for children who are going to school, 9 o'clock, handling all your phone and your tablet and all of those things. Leave them in for safekeeping. Now, the adults need to also set the example. This do as I say and not as I do never worked. So you need to establish specific periods for social media use. Then you also need on your phone as well, and their phones, the children's phone, to disable non-essential notifications, reduce unnecessary distractions. Because every time your phone go ping, your mind goes, wow, I wonder who is that? I wonder what is that? Especially if you have a video posted out there, you want to see somebody said something about it. So you create phone-free zones like the dining table, the bedroom, or family gatherings. You replace screen time by engaging in exercise, reading instead. Take a book and read. Other hobbies, even play chess or something, or volunteering to assist somewhere in some group or organization. And of course, spiritual activities, yoga, meditation, gym exercise, other games that people can play. Then, of course, there's what you call digital detox. Take periodic breaks from social media. Tell yourself, well, look, today I'm not going on this side, I'm not going on that side. Even 1 day per week can be beneficial if you decide, well, look, today I'm staying away from social. I'll take my calls and so on and keep them brief. Or if you think it is becoming a problem, seek professional help. If attempts to reduce usage repeatedly fail, counseling may be helpful. And that is what this program is about. So, what parents can do? Let's quickly look at parents play a critical role in social media addiction. And some of the recommendation is you be a role model. Children imitate adult behavior. So you put on the phone. Set boundaries and you keep them as well. Establish reasonable screen time limits. Keep devices out of bedrooms, especially at night. Encourage outdoor activities, sports, and recreation. Provide healthy alternatives. And of course, maintain open communication. Discuss these things in family gatherings, the merits and demerits of it. So you want to discuss online experiences regularly. So you get an idea of what sites the children are looking at, what they think about it. You need to teach children, especially children, critical thinking. Help children to evaluate information and recognize misinformation. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Parental involvement remains one of the strongest protective factors where this is concerned. Now, what schools and employers and government can do? One is teach digital literacy. That is one of the things that should be taught in school. Promote responsible technology use. Address cyberbullying promptly. That's in schools. Employers encourage balanced technology use. Promote employee wellness programs. Government and community organizations can have public education campaigns about social media addiction, research on local trends. That's for the government to do, see what's happening. And I know they have passed laws on cyberbullying and all of that, which is a good thing. Youth development programs and mental health awareness initiatives should also be addressed by the government of the day. Now, addressing social media addiction requires a collective effort. So that as we conclude today's program, it is important to remember that technology itself is not the enemy. Social media is a tool. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The difference lies in how it is used. I want to say that again. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The difference lies in how it is used. The same is true of social media. When used wisely, it can educate, inspire, connect, and empower. But when used excessively, it can distract, isolate, and consume the person. So ask yourself today, how many hours do I spend online each day? Is social media helping me achieve my goals? Has it improved or damaged my relationships? Am I controlling social media or is it controlling me? life is happening right now, not only on a screen, but in our homes, our communities, our workplaces, our schools, and our relationships. So I want you to now just look up from the phone sometime and pay attention to see what is happening around you. Don't have your phone head buried in that phone all the time. And please talk to your family, visit a friend, take a walk, read a book, develop a skill, and serve your community. All of these are healthy, valuable options. The greatest connections in life are not measured by followers, likes, or views. They are measured by love, purpose, meaningful relationships, and genuine human interaction. I want to thank you all for joining the program this morning on this topic. And of course, this will be posted on YouTube and Facebook as soon as its completion this morning. It will also be repeated at 9 p.m. tonight on radio and TV Jagriti. So you can go back and listen to it. And of course, you can send it to anyone who you believe could benefit from this. Please share it with other people who may not have had the chance to listen to the program this morning and who you believe can benefit from this. So that finally, may we all learn to use technology wisely while preserving our mental health and our families and our humanity. So I want to thank Radio and TV Jagriti for providing this airtime free of charge as a community service. Thank the people in the office for facilitating this program, Jason Kalu, Mr. Bhima Ramdani, and of course the CEO, Mr. Vijay Maharaj, who has continually been supportive of this program. I want to thank all of you who are listening and who send in your comments from time to time. It makes the program better and better every day. And of course, you have my number on the screen. You can text me any messages, any questions you have. I can answer you directly. So thank you again. Until next week, Thursday. Sitaram and goodbye.